This is Carl Stafford, Extension Agent in Culpeper, Virginia, and livestock forages are my appreciation in agriculture and the soils. I'm for soil because what it does for that system that I'm so appreciative of, pastures, and you get on into no-till crops as well. That soil matters everything to the production of that system and soil life and what the benefits of storing carbon, organic matter, productivity, moisture, retention. So I am for soil because it does a lot for agriculture.
Welcome everyone to For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee, and joining me, Eric Bendfeldt with Virginia Cooperative Extension Community Viability, as well as Mary Sketch Bryant with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. And guys, we have a great guest today. She will be a keynote speaker at the upcoming conference. Eric, introduce our guest.
Yes, Jeff, we're very pleased to have Nicole Masters with us. As you mentioned, Nicole will be speaking at the 2024 Virginia Farm to Table Conference in December. And Nicole is the director and founder of Integrity Soils and very much known for her work around soil health and ecological systems thinking, and has written a book called For the Love of Soil. So we're very pleased to have Nicole with us, Nicole, and would really like to start it off. Where did this love for the soil come from, the earliest beginnings?
Hi, Eric. Well, it's great to be here. Very excited to meet you all and see you're part of the world in December. Yeah, it's such an interesting question because I think there was never a time where there wasn't soil or a fascination with ecology and nature around me. I think we were very lucky, growing up in New Zealand to have such exposure to the wild and the forests and the rivers and the beach. And there's just this, I'm very grateful for that childhood of just feeling really connected to natural world. And I think one of the moments, and I talk about it a lot, but it was, these impactful moments that shape our directions was when Mount St. Helens erupted on the other side of the world, and I was 5 years old, and just recalling the sense of just how big the earth was and how quickly ecosystems could change, and then watching the magazine, the National Geographic magazine, talking about the life coming back to Mount St. Helens, and I was so awestruck by it, and it's impacted me on so many different ways, which is it's interesting that I end up living in America, leaving New Zealand and coming to the States.
And Nicole, you talked some about moving from New Zealand to the United States, and you've also taught and spoke all over the world. What is common about soil across all of those places, and where do you find differences?
I think what I see as a commonality is everywhere I go, people think that they are dealing with the hardest situation, the most challenging environment. And I'm like, wow, it's really interesting. And I think it's part of human nature, just you're working with it and it feels like it's unique and it's challenging. And it is. And I think that's the other piece is we are all, yeah, very unique. I think that the things that bind us are these themes of what has been putting a drag on somebody's farming system, and is this something that's been imposed a little bit historically? Is it more recent imposition in terms of why are we not seeing life flourish or see yields and quality in a way that perhaps people used to see? And I also think there's part of this is a lot of these areas, we're growing less biomass than what was growing before the advent of chemical farming and industrial agriculture. Is these landscapes have the potential to have far more biomass. And yeah, how do we really ask the question of how does this work in nature in every single domain around the world, just asking a deeper question so that we can really fulfill on being able to support ourselves and that nutritious food.
We're talking today with Nicole Masters, founder of Integrity Soils. And as Eric mentioned, she's the author of a very highly rated book on Amazon.com. It's called For the Love of Soil. And Nicole, I've been reading some of the reviews of your book, and people seem to be inspired by your writing about dirt, no, about soil, about healthy soils. I was just joking there.
Yeah, that's a four-letter word, right?
Right. We don't call it dirt, do we? Speaking of soil, how do you define good soil? You've lived in various places on planet Earth. How do you define good soil?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think the question itself is how do we define a lot of what we're doing? And I think it's a human need to kind of put labels and things in boxes. Whereas for me, good, healthy soil is it's a feeling because I'll walk onto a property and we'll dig a hole and you get those smells and you can feel that richness, and a soil can look healthy. That's very different in Western Australia, for instance, than it would be in Virginia, right? And you can still get a sense that this soil is flourishing, even though in this case it's sand. So for me, there are there are many indicators for what's not healthy, as opposed to what does healthy soil look like? Does it hold on to nutrients and water? Does it support vibrant, healthy, diverse ecosystems? Are there deep rooting systems? How deep does that soil go? What is the full potential of the soil? So for me, I think it's broader than just the mechanical ways that we can assess soil health. Yes, we want to see infiltration. Yes, we want to see porosity and soil structure, but it's a deeper sense of that smell, that feel, and it's hard to put into words.
And
Yeah.
oh, okay. And Nicole, like you mentioned about going on a farm or a ranch, and how do you start working with people? And soil science can be somewhat complex, but also there's some basic principles of ways to build soil health. How do you start as you visit a farm or visit a farmer or rancher? Where do you begin?
Hmm. Yeah, good question. As an agroecologist, the focus is far wider than just soil. So working with people, and I think this is the piece that we've been missing for a long time in extension and education is people are the central part of this conversation. So really digging into what is it that are your goals? What do you want to see? What has been the barriers or challenges in really achieving those outcomes? So I connect people with their dream. What is it that you really want to see on your place? And then what has been the missing? I do not come at it as an expert, and I think that's also been the model. It's I'm working alongside somebody. I'm only there for like 0.001% of their lifetime, and I'm coming in and I can see something, but to be able to work alongside somebody so that they can see it too is all right. What are some of these indicators either in the soil or with plants or with animals? And then how does that person start taking the actions for themselves? So it's a very different humanistic approach to consulting or to coaching. Um, and we get some absolutely phenomenal results through using that approach, because at the end of the day, that farmer is on that land in their context with their understanding. And for me to come along and say, hey, you need a 12 species cover crop and to integrate llamas into this is, I feel, really unhelpful.
And Nicole, kind of going off of that, what role do you see mindset playing in this, the mindset of farmers, and as well as I know you work with a lot of practitioners and service providers as well, and how that fits into success in the soil health world?
Mindset is critical, and then above mindset really is your philosophy and your beliefs, and above that is paradigm. So we work a lot in shifting paradigms, which then impact on mindset. And so that's a big part of the training that we offer. We do a 36-week training program for those that are interested in actually becoming agroecologists and coaching themselves. And if you talk about shifting mindset, it can sound quite arrogant. Like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to shift your mindset because your mindset's off. It's much more about how do we open doorways to feel in a deeper way more connected to landscape, so that some of the decisions that you're making can alter. Because if you start to feel like, if you have a mindset of how do I work more deeply with nature, how do I work alongside nature, because I'm a guest here for a very short amount of time, and asking those questions, what are the patterns, what is it that this landscape would tend towards, then that mindset of like killing, control, domination, fear, uncertainty. There's a lot of things that actually shift and what we see. And there's certainly been research around the world that's really interesting, looking at how shifting your mindset towards how do I fit within this landscape, as opposed to how do I make the landscape fit to me, which is the main shift that we see in mindset, is that people's stress levels reduce, their profitability increases. There's a whole lot of really interesting studies that have happened looking at what happens when we start to shift our relationship to the landscape. And I think for this idea of controlling landscapes actually been a very short paradigm, a very short mindset. And it's only now that we're starting to realize, hey, actually, that command and control mentality really isn't working, and it doesn't work for us. And actually, the only people it's working for are the supply companies. They're doing very well out of this, but the farmers themselves and the landscape itself is not reaping the rewards. So I'm seeing quite dramatic shifts in this reconnection to landscape around the world right now.
Once again, we're talking with Nicole Masters. She is the founder of Integrity Soils. Her most recent book is available at Amazon.com and also at your website, integritysoils.com. It's called For the Love of Soil, Strategies to Regenerate Our Food Production Systems. And speaking of your website, Nicole, I have a question. There's a couple of pictures on your website where you're out in a field and you're inside a pit. And there's a crowd of people all around you, and it looks like something educational is going on. Can you describe what you're doing in that pit?
My mom likes to say, "Oh no, it's another Nicole in a hole." It's one of the things I love being able to do if we do intensive workshops, is make a trench that's big enough that other people can actually get inside, so we can get eye level with that soil matrix. And also, I feel like people aren't digging enough holes. They're still not digging enough holes and really appreciating what they're walking upon and what lies beneath that ground. So by digging a big trench like that, we can all get up close and personal and really look at what are limitations to air and water movement, what is really putting the brakes on above ground production. And we've found even those that have felt like they've been doing a really good job above ground, they still haven't been digging enough holes to really assess, like, is this system moving forwards or backwards? So a trench can be really, really powerful if someone's got a backhoe. One thing I do find is that guys seem to get on to, I don't know if you guys might have an insight in this. I don't know what happens in people's minds, but they get on a backhoe and something overcomes them and they dig all the way to China. I don't know if it's, someone
we
told
can
me it's
always
mechanical
get
compensation.
deeper.
I don't know if you suddenly have a flashback and you're 4 years old and you're in the sandpit at kindergarten. Something happens in men's, it's only happened with men so far, in men's minds. We're going to dig a hole. And so we end up with these like 20-foot deep trenches, and I don't get into those ones. That's not very safe.
And Nicole, I think you spoke to this idea of like, or as an educator, thinking about, well, how do we engage more of people's senses, and sort of intrigued by the idea of working with people's dreams. And then you were just talking about sort of the tactile need for digging a pit and actually touching the soil. Love to hear your perspective on.
Yeah, so a lot of our work is experiential in terms of it needs to be felt, it needs to be touched and smelt and embedded into the soma, into that somatic experience. And that's what we're trained in as coaches, and that's what we train other coaches in, is learning is not a bunch of knowledge. It's not someone throwing information on you. Like, we can geek out and we can talk about all the secondary metabolites and get really excited about what's happening in the soil. But what I find is they're just words. They don't really make any difference until you've had that experience and had that impact for yourself and on your own piece of land to then motivate a change in action, right? Because what we're asking, I guess, through this space of regeneration is we're asking producers to do something that's really, really different, and really different in a lot of ways from what they've been doing in the past 100 years. And so how to bring that into the body then creates an action that's more real. So we've moved away from just this purely logical, all focused up in the head brain, and then we talk about the heart brain and the gut brain, and they are all interlinked with soil, which is fascinating. There's organisms in soil that we breathe in that will actually alter hormone production in the gut, that will alter brain chemistry, and we don't get that experience if we don't get down and sniff some soil.
Well, unfortunately, our time is up in this portion of the podcast, but I would like to invite you, Nicole, if you would stick around. We'd like to record an additional podcast, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about your book, about the contents of the book, and about basic soil health for not only farmers, for gardeners, or anyone who is involved with soil health. Our guest in this podcast has been Nicole Masters, founder of Integrity Soils. Once again, that web address is integritysoils.com. The title of her book, For the Love of Soil, Strategies to Regenerate Our Food Production Systems. Thank you, Nicole, and we'll see you again in a future episode.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Jeff.
For the Soil, a conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. If you should have a specific question about soil health, just call your local extension office or your local USDA service center, or perhaps your Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of the Flip Charts, all rights reserved. For the Soil, a conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee.